So I hear it all the time. Manual transmissions are the best anti-theft measures for any car. They're built in. You don't have to do anything else as far as additional security because people don't know how to drive a manual. It's a lost art. If you have a manual transmission, your car is simply unstealable, right? Well, is that a bet that you're willing to take? Are you willing to take a bet on your Scat Pack or Hellcat that it can't be stolen because it is a manual? Do you even need additional security on any car that is a manual? Are manuals truly unstealable? This might surprise you. Let's get into it. Today's video is brought to you by CarLock, the world's best GPS tracking and alert system. With CarLock, you'll be able to get various alerts to monitor your car, such as vehicle movement, vehicle vibrations, engine starting. The unfortunate event that your CarLock gets disconnected, you will get an alert for that too. You can purchase your own CarLock by clicking on the link down below. That will give you a 10% discount on your CarLock purchase, as well as use my code to get a 14-day free trial with CarLock as well. Get you a CarLock. You deserve that peace of mind. Let's get into the video. You see the title and you see the thumbnail. So as I stated at the top of the video, everyone keeps saying if you have a manual transmission in your car, you have the best anti-theft measure ever. You don't need anything else. You don't need any extra security. The manual transmission will pretty much knock out any thief that tries to steal the car, because driving a manual is a lost art. People are no longer interested in learning to drive a manual. A lot of people don't know how to drive a manual, and that's all you need. You don't need anything else, right?
It shows the victim there finishing up pumping gas in Germantown on Saturday. You can see the two teens forced the door open, grabbed the driver, and demanded his keys. They hopped in. You're going to see it right there. They tried to take off, but wait a minute. Nope, they couldn't. It's the best anti-theft device you can have. It was a stick shift, manual transmission. Turns out those young suspects didn't know how to drive it.
Well, take a look at this. A car with a standard build proving to have unintentional anti-theft protection. Boulder police catching a suspected car thief who couldn't quite figure out how to use the stick shift. Boulder police called out Friday to a truck that hit a fire hydrant. Police say the driver saw the truck with keys still inside, took off, but didn't get too far. Police arresting that woman and returning the truck to its owner.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
If you don't know how to drive stick, good luck.
Honesty moment. Do you know how to drive stick?
Oh, man. I learned in high school, but I haven't done it since.
Really?
So I don't know. I don't know if I could do it.
I love driving stick.
It's fun.
It's so fun.
It is fun.
So my first car was stick shift.
You can actually add this one to the dumb criminals file. All four suspects didn't know how to drive a standard, which meant they weren't going anywhere, and it was all caught on camera. Take a look.
It was just after 6 o'clock last night. The driver of this 1995 Honda Civic pulling into Dearman's Quick Stop leaves his keys in the car as he goes inside. About 30 seconds later, trouble pulls up. Sheriff's investigators say 4 men in this black SUV see the car as an easy target. Or so they thought. Taking a look from a different surveillance angle, this is the moment the owner of the car comes out the store and realizes his car is being stolen. But he didn't have much to worry about because the suspects didn't know how to drive a stick shift.
Well, there you have it, right? 3 different videos, 3 different attempts to steal a car with a manual transmission, and all 3 failed because the thieves are too stupid to know how to drive a manual transmission. So I know I asked at the top of the video, would you be willing to bet your Scat Pack or your Hellcat, your $50, $60, $70, $80, $90,000 car, that it will not be stolen because it is a manual, right? Before you make that bet, let me show y'all something real quick. All right, so here's the situation I'm about to show y'all real quick here. So we have a 2016 Challenger, right? This 2016 Challenger Hellcat was stolen from an apartment down in Fort Mill, South Carolina. If you're familiar with the area, you know Fort Mill, South Carolina is like right across the border from Charlotte. It's not a suburb of Charlotte, but because of the area and how close it is to Charlotte, I mean, it's its own like city. It's in a different county and things like that. It's pretty close to Charlotte, right? You can literally leave Fort Mill and be in downtown Charlotte probably in about 20 minutes, depending on traffic. Traffic sucks, so it's probably gonna take you about 30, 40 minutes to get there, but that's beside the point. So it was stolen from an apartment in Fort Mill. So saying it was stolen from an apartment shows you that this car was not at all put into a garage, right? Fort Mill is a nice area if you're familiar with the area, right? It's a pretty nice area. It's pretty easy to let your guard down because of that particular area. So it was stolen. Now this happened about a year ago, but it will still prove the point that I'm trying to make here, right? This Hellcat got stolen. See all the pictures here. So I'm gonna go through a couple of pictures here. So bam, another picture there. You see the Hellcat, really clean Hellcat, black and white theme, bronze wheels, pretty dope stuff up under there. Got some hydro dipping going on, black and white theme all through the car. So this car is pretty clean, right? Pretty clean car, all that. Now I'll show y'all one more thing here. So now we see the interior of the car right here, right? So there's something I want to show y'all. What's on the interior? Let's zoom in. Well, I did that completely wrong. So you see the car, look at this. What is that we have? This is a 6-speed manual Hellcat that was stolen. If you think that's just a fake shifter, steering wheel does not have any paddle shifters on it, and we'll go down here. There's 3 pedals. That is not a brake pedal. I mean a parking brake pedal. That is the clutch pedal. So this car that was stolen was a manual. I just showed y'all 3 clips where manuals are pretty much impossible to steal. That's what everyone is saying, but yet we have a manual Challenger Hellcat that got stolen from an apartment in Fort Mill. Now I can understand letting your guard down because number one, you're in Fort Mill, right? Pretty nice area depending on what side you are. Number 2, this is a manual. Like I said, I just showed y'all 3 news clips of manual transmission cars not being stolen when the thieves had the car in their hands, right? Hellcat, $70,000 car, more than likely parked outside at the apartment because I don't have to worry about my car being stolen. It is a manual. This car gets stolen, right? Are you willing to take a bet that your Hellcat or Scat Pack will not be stolen because it's a manual? I showed you like 3 news clips of cars being stolen. I showed you 1 post of a manual Hellcat being stolen. First thing you're thinking is like, we know Hellcats and Scat Packs and Dodge vehicles in total, they get stolen a lot. If manuals are so easy to steal, like you're saying, why is this the first time we're really hearing about it? So what gives, right? Because they're hard to steal. That's what we're saying. There's a very simple reason why we don't hear about manuals getting stolen that much. Well, the reason we don't hear a lot about manual Challengers being stolen or any manual Dodge product is there's not a lot of manual Dodge vehicles out there to begin with to steal, right? So if you just think about all the lineup for Dodge, right? Every car that gets stolen like Trackhawk, TRX, Scat Pack, Hellcat, probably leaving out something, maybe Chrysler 300s with the like 392 engines and stuff like that. If you think about all of those cars, only 1 model of those cars have a manual transmission option in there, right? Also Durango, meant to throw that out there too. Only 1 of those have a manual transmission in it, and that is the Challenger. All the other cars are all automatic, right? The chances of a manual Challenger being stolen are pretty low just because there's not that many out there. I'm gonna put this into perspective for you here. I was in a car group, all Challenger car group. I think around to be between maybe 250, 300 people in this group, and I might be give or take a few, right? In that entire group, giving about maybe 25 people in there owned a Challenger that had a manual in it, and I might be overestimating. I was one of them, and I can think offhand for a fact that I know maybe about 5 other people that had a manual. But outside of that, everyone had automatics. All right, so I'm gonna take it a step further for y'all and show y'all there's not a lot of manuals out there at all. So like I said, the likelihood of a manual being stolen that you will hear about is extremely low. I'm on cars.com. I like to go to cars.com a lot here. I'm gonna show you just right now. I filtered out for only 2015 and up Chargers and Challengers. I want to show you exactly how many manuals are out there right now to be purchased. This is both new and used nationwide. 7,800 of those, right? So we can round up 8,000 of those, right? Let's go to Challenger. 6,700 total new and used Dodge Challengers from 2015 and up. Now we also have to remember every single Charger is automatic, as you all know. And when it comes to the Challenger, there are trims that don't even offer a manual. Like the only trims that you can get a manual in are going to be the RT, the Scat Pack, the Hellcat, the 707 and 717 version. And that's it. Anything above that 717 Hellcat will not have a manual in it. No red eye, no demon, none of that, right? 6,700 Challengers here that you see. Now let's move down here. You probably already saw it, but I'm gonna go back down here in case you missed it. If we look for transmission, look at this. Out of all those cars, of course, 68 is unknown, very small number here. 5,700 of these are automatic and only 845 are manual. So you got to think about between Charger and Challenger, right? We have what, almost 8,000 Chargers for sale. nearly 7,000. I just round up to 7,000. So about 15,000 Dodge Charger and Dodge Challengers for sale. Only 845 of them are manual. That's really a small number that could even be stolen. I also meant to mention none of the V6 models have a manual transmission either. So you were talking about only 3 trims out of all of these that have a manual transmission in there. So again, like I said, the likelihood of a manual Challenger being stolen is pretty low because of the fact there are not that many out there. Now, I know this does not take account of the ones that people own at the moment. I don't think the distribution of automatic to manual transmissions in the Challenger is going to be too much different from what we see here, right? I don't even know that many people that had a Challenger that had a manual transmission, and I was in a group that were all Challengers of all trims, and probably only 20 people. I said 25, but it's definitely no more than 20 people in that group had manual transmission. Okay, all right. So I know you're saying, well, it doesn't matter how many Challengers that are manual out there. The main issue is the fact that people don't know how to drive a manual anymore. It is a lost art. People don't care to learn about it. We know car manufacturers not making that many of them. I even said not that many people that I know own them. There's not a lot of people out there that even know how to drive them. Well, all right, y'all. So on the screen here now, this is kind of an actual study, and ask them about their experience of owning a manual. Have they, leased, owned, whatever? Do they even know how to drive it? This first slide right here actually is a summary of everything in this whole presentation they did. It's from 2020. I don't think the data changed too much since then. I think it will probably be close to this. 55% of Americans say they have ever owned or leased a manual transmission. So more than half of the people have owned one. And I know what you guys are saying. Well, that doesn't translate to people knowing how to drive one. 66% of the people know how to drive a manual. So just because people not buying them, just because there are not that many on the road, there are a lot of people out there that know how to drive a manual. This is pretty much saying, get 100 people, 66% of them will know how to drive a manual. If we can break it down to a smaller group, if we have 10 people, nearly 7 people out of that 10 will know how to drive a manual. Now, granted, they may not own a manual car. They may not have owned one in the past, but the fact they know how to drive it does say a lot more people know how to do it than you think. 66% know how to drive a manual, right? So there's a distribution here that can, men to women age. I know a lot of you guys saying more of the older crowd will know how to drive a manual. People that have owned or leased one. So you can see the age distribution here, right? Of course, most of the people that have owned or leased a car with a manual transmission will be men over the age of 55, right? And as you go down in age, it goes down in percentage. So at least half of the men, no matter what age bracket that you fall into, have owned one before, right? Let's go look at it how it looks from if you know how to drive it, right? And we know that percentage is going to be higher, but if you look at it here, over 2/3 of the people know how to drive a manual. So if you have 3 people, 2 of them would know how to drive a manual. Based on this study. Now, I'm not sure if it was biased or anything like that, but 2/3 of the people know how to drive a manual. You can see here. Of course, the highest age range are going to be men over the age of 55. Every age range here is at least, showing 50% almost. The lowest is going to be women between the ages of 13 to 34, but everything else is over 50% of the people know how to drive a manual. Granted, never owned one before, never leased one before, but they know how to do it, right? Yeah. So based on that study, people know how to drive a manual. 2/3 of the people know how to drive a manual, right? And this study shows not a lot of people have owned a manual, but they know how to do it. And you got to think about it from another perspective as well. Like, depending on what you do for a living, you may have to know how to drive a manual car or any kind of manual vehicle, and you may not ever own one. Quick story about myself. Like, I worked at a very known electronic dealer, and we installed car electronics into cars, and that was part of what I did as well. I had to know how to drive a manual. We couldn't stop doing what we were doing. We couldn't jeopardize not making money because I couldn't pull the car into the install bay, right? I have to know how to drive a manual car. If I'm the only person there working, I can't say, well, I can't work in your car because I don't know how to drive it. That's bad business, right? I have to know how to drive the car to pull it in and out of the install bay. Granted, there wasn't a lot of manual cars I had to deal with, but I had to know how to drive one. And that's not the only job you have to know how to drive manual cars. You got to think about your valets, right? I mean, if you're going to get your car valeted, how many of the valets do you know that are like over 55? I haven't seen a lot of valets over 55. Now, granted, yes, there's some valets that don't know how to drive a manual. I've seen it firsthand myself. They have to know how to drive a manual. They can park it and move it without having to deal with having to get someone else to do it. Mechanics, they got to know how to drive those cars and stuff like that. You have people that work in these industries, a lot of people that work in these industries that are not 55 and up, that know how to drive a manual car, and they have to do it for their day-to-day job, right? Just because they don't own one, just because they're not buying one, doesn't mean they don't know how to do that. So I know what you guys thinking, right? Just because someone knows how to drive a manual doesn't automatically make them a criminal that knows how to drive a manual, right? I've showed you these multiple videos where criminals aren't able to drive manual cars, right? And that is true, but you have to look at kind of like the numbers for a certain extent, right? Just because 66% of people know how to drive a manual, that doesn't mean all 66% of them are criminals. It's probably a much smaller percentage could potentially be criminals. I don't think they probably interviewed any, but it's true. Not a lot of criminals know how to drive it, but based on the numbers, percentage of people knowing how to drive a manual, whether they're are a car thief or not, is not low enough to say that it's impossible to steal a manual car. It just takes the right thief who knows how to do it. Now, we know thieves, over time, they get smarter and they understand kind of what they need to do to steal cars. That's why they buy all these tools and different things to steal cars as fast as possible. Now, if you get a professional thief that wants to steal a car and they don't want to run into a situation where they can't drive the car, they're more than likely going to make sure they know how to drive a manual. Because if they want to steal a Hellcat and they're making a living stealing cars, they don't want to miss out on however they get paid because they can't drive a car. For every smart criminal that can do their job well, we have a whole bunch of dumb ones, which we saw plenty of videos of, and those are ones that we hear about that can't drive a manual. But there are going to be quite a few out there that would be able to drive a manual quite easy. Now, the fact we don't, like I said, don't have that happen a lot is because of the fact there's not that many manual cars out there. So of course, a manual car is going to be less likely to be stolen, because if most cars, probably 98% of the cars out there are automatic, you may think, well, I have a manual, I'm safe, right? Well, I mean, it just takes the right thief to come along, right? And you just haven't ran into it, or I hope you don't run into it, but I'm just saying you haven't ran into it. So the biggest takeaway from everything I've been saying here today is, if you don't think you need security on your car because you have a manual transmission, because you got those 3 pedals down there on the floor, but the fact you think you have the perfect anti-theft device in your car, you might be giving yourself a false sense of security. The car that was stolen was a manual Hellcat in a pretty nice area, and he probably thought the same thing. Like, I have a manual car, I'm in a nice area, I don't have to worry about my car being stolen. And he wakes up and his car is gone. All it takes is that one thief that knows what they're doing to have your car gone. Now, while a manual transmission may prevent some thieves from driving off of your car, it may not stop some thieves from still breaking into your car, and you need to know what's going on, right? It's time to break a window into your car. You want to know about it. You want to get alerted for that. Car lock, make sure you have that in your car. Get all the alerts, vibration, engine started, they decide to unplug it, all the 9, right? All of that, you'll get alerted for every single one of those things. If the battery, like, it loses power, all that type of stuff, right? They start it up and they get past, getting into the car, and you miss all those other alerts, you get the alert for that too. If they somehow know how to drive a manual and it moves outside of the location that it is, you get alerted for all of that as well. So don't let having a manual transmission give you a false sense of security that your car cannot be stolen. If a competent thief comes by, they will have it stolen. So you still need to protect your car regardless of what transmission you have. Granted, there's not a lot of manuals out there. Don't leave it to chance. There's enough people out here that know how to drive them. Discount codes and 14-day free trial for the car lock on the screen here now, so make sure you do that and protect yourself and get that for your car, regardless if it is a Hellcat Scat Pack or if it could be some other brand of car. Like I said, Camaros are on the rise for being stolen, so you might want to protect yourself there as well. Those come in manual. Definitely want to make sure you're well protected in all those areas, and make sure there's different accessories as well. The vibration sensors I showed them in one of my previous videos work excellent. If they breathe when your car wrong, those will go off. They break the window, those will go off. All that stuff, it just makes that vibration alert much more sensitive to be picked up and all of that stuff, right? Make sure you hardwire it into the car. Don't just plug it in under the dashboard. Make sure you get the hardwire kit and make sure you do that as well. All of those accessories are on the website, so make sure you protect your car. Do not rely on having a manual to protect you. That's only one layer, and the right person can get by. In fact, it'll be much easier to push a car away if you have a manual. Just throw it in neutral. Just push the clutch in. and it's a manual. We know thieves push these cars away. We've seen it plenty of times, right? So link to get your car lock will be below in the description and in the pinned comments, man. Manuals are dying. A lot of car manufacturers aren't making it anymore. So don't bet that your $50, $60, $70, $80,000 manual equipped car is protected because of that third pedal. Because if they get the car, more than likely it's going to be really, really hard for you to even find another manual car. These manufacturers aren't making these manuals anymore, right? I had a manual car before. I had my RT. It was a manual. I love driving it. Such a fun experience to drive. I know that manuals aren't as fast as the automatics, but if my Charger, my wide body Charger came with the manual, I probably would have bought I would have bought another manual if it came in the Chargers. They need to do that, which I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but if they came in manual, I would have had one for sure. But make sure you get protected, and if you made it this far in the video, please subscribe to the channel. Once you're around for all the car talk that we have, and also how to protect your car regardless if you have a manual or not, man. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, be around for everything we got going on. We'll catch you on the next video. We are out. Cut it.